In the Walt Disney Company succession game, there's one name that keeps repeatedly coming up that is most likely to succeed current CEO Bob Iger. And that is Dana Walden, longtime friend of presidential candidate Kamala Harris, who Dana will be hosting in the presidential debate on ABC against Donald Trump in a few weeks. People have talked about that. Maybe there's a conflict of interest, maybe not. But one thing's for sure is people need to start taking a good long look at just who Dana Walden is, because if you think Disney is a left-wing company now, hold on to your hats if she gets in. Renegade Online. We had a recent piece here from Puck Magazine. I've got a long back to find out. Talking about Dana Walden, and they seem to be now kind of honing in on this, with Dana Walden indeed being the person who was at the top of the list to take over the Walt Disney Company when Bob Iger leaves. We've been telling you now for quite some time that she was going to be the one to do it, and if you saw her in the thumbnail, and you're wondering why the thumbnail for this live show was Dana Walden and Kamala Harris, well, if you don't know this, we've talked about this a little bit before, but you know, Kamala Harris and Dana Walden are like besties, like literally. They hang out in the same country clubs and neighborhoods. They go jogging together. They go to parties together. They're big friends. There was even, if you remember a few weeks ago, the whole issue about the next presidential debate that is going to be hosted on ABC. And of course, Dana Walden's job at Disney is running ABC. So that's where Kamala Harris will be having her next debate against Donald Trump. I'm sure it will be totally fair and unbiased on ABC like it always is. So we'll see. But in fact, I see a thing here coming in from KMG. I'll bring this up real quick for $20. He says in January of 2020 at a DAS, that's Disney Advertising Sales. And I brought this up because y'all know KMG is a veteran of this industry. He knows a lot of this inside baseball stuff. He says Dana Walden stated the greatest accomplishment of her career was defending and not firing Juicy Smooth. I'm still going to
Juicy Smoulier.
Yeah, I'm still going to call him that famous French actor, Juicy Smoulier. You know that guy? For staging his assault. If you think Disney is bad now with Bob Iger, just wait until Dana Walden is CEO. Yes. Thank you, KMG. I had completely forgotten about that. You're right. The greatest accomplishment of her career was defending and not firing Juicy after his.
Did you say this before or after Juicy was known to have basically perjured himself? Let's put it that way.
Well, in January of 2020, I think that was after all that, was it not? Pretty sure. You have to go back and look it up because that was the election year. It might have been. Because obviously it was after the event, but it might have been before because it didn't take long. It was only a matter of months before it was definitively proven that he was lying. He's just lying out of his ass. I mean, look, Dave Chappelle knew it like the next morning. Okay, obviously,
plenty of people knew.
All of us knew the next morning it was fake. The cops knew the next day that he was lying about it because the story didn't make any sense. So it really doesn't matter. But thank you, KMG. But let's get to this article here. This is from Dylan Byers talking about Dana Walden. And you know, the future of her and the Walt Disney Company. And he says on Thursday night, look at the opening line, on Thursday night, while her friend Kamala Harris was accepting the Democrat nomination for president in Chicago, Dana Walden was on the Paramount lot in Hollywood for the season premiere of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. Had Harris's historic ascension happened in any previous cycle, the Disney Entertainment co-chair would very likely have been at the United Center with her husband Matt and other Hollywood bigwigs, Jeff Shell, blah, 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 who were on hand to witness the speech and take part in the festivities. Kamala Harris has described Dana Walden and her husband Matt as, quote, extraordinary friends, partially responsible for her marriage, Kamala Harris's marriage to Doug Emhoff, and the Waldens have donated to her campaigns for decades. Maybe Willie Brown's too. Alas, some strategic considerations were probably prevented Walden from making the trip. ABC News, which she oversees, is hosting a presidential debate next month, and Walden's ties to Kamala Harris have already come under heavy-handed scrutiny from Donald Trump and the New York Times, as notably, Walden is seen by most Disney and industry insiders as the leading candidate to take over the entertainment giant when Bob Iger steps down at the end of 2026. Obviously, the optics would have hurt both the company and its news division, as well as her own ambitions, a brand withdrawal for all involved in an Igerian parlance. So they're already setting this up as, well, she's trying to politically walk her way through this. Andre, I didn't know if you'd seen this one before, but you've probably seen...
No, I haven't actually.
Okay.
I kind of wish I had before I recorded the video I did earlier today about Succession that probably will be released tomorrow. But yeah.
Yeah. And there's been a number of articles in the last week that have been picking up the whole Disney Succession thing again. And then this one came out from Puck, kind of bringing in more the political side of things. But Dylan Byers' continues series says Succession at Disney is an evergreen preoccupation in Hollywood and on Wall Street, but recent developments have brought the issue back to the fore. On Wednesday, Disney's board officially tapped director James Gorman. James Gorman, again, for those who remember, I think we talked a little bit about this on Wednesday. He is the board member at Disney from Morgan Stanley, which, if you're going to pick somebody to kind of head that thing up, he's probably one of the better people on that board to do it. That being said, it's funny they're just doing it now when they were supposed to start this process 2 years ago that they promised. But here we are. Gorman, of course, ran an almost effortlessly smooth process to replace himself as CEO at Morgan Stanley. Meanwhile, Iger gave an interview to Kelly Ripa in which he confessed to being, quote, obsessed with finding his replacement. I seriously doubt it. Thus, Hollywood's favorite parlor game recommenced from Toscana to the Rotunda. Officially, all four of Iger's chairpersons, Walden, her fellow entertainment co-chair Alan Bergman, and for those of you that may not know or don't remember, like I said, Dana Walden, co-chair who runs really the television side of things, Hulu, Disney Plus, for example, in some regards, ABC News, all that, basically everything except ESPN. That's Jimmy Pitaro. And then Alan Bergman runs the studio side. So if it comes out of Lucasfilm or Marvel or Pixar or Walt Disney Animation, anything that hits the theater, Alan Bergman is the boss of all of those different studios, over those studio heads. He's Kevin Feige's boss, okay? He's Kathy Kennedy's boss. And then you've got, of course, Josh D'Amaro, who's chairman of the parks. They're all under consideration for the job. But, however, only Dana Walden and Josh D'Amaro are broadly seen as leading candidates for the position of Disney's CEO. Jimmy Pitaro is still a dark horse. Bergman, who is fundamentally a finance guy, is very unlikely to get the position. I would probably tend to agree with that. Increasingly, the conventional wisdom among the creative community and crowd is that Walden is Iger's preferred candidate, especially given her formidable skills as a television executive, her deep ties to the creative community, and her recent leadership of Disney's streaming operation. And yes, they are both moored in the Brentwood set. After all, it was Dana Walden who came up with the ruse of a walk and talk with Iger so that Disney board chairman Susan Arnold could reach him and offer him back his old job. So if y'all don't remember what happened there when Chapek was still around and they were trying to get rid of him, this is literally how they were passing messages back and forth. And this was something that came out in that CNBC article. They didn't want to have really kind of talk to Bob on the phone or bring him into the Disney office or what have you. So when they wanted to get a hold of Iger, they would go to Dana. Dana would go out for a jog in the morning in her neighborhood where Bob Iger also lives. And she and Bob would just happen to run into each other and have conversations about kicking Bob Chapek out. So this is actually how it happened. But her champions, and I love how they use the word acolyte here. Her champions and acolytes Dana Walden, are the very creators, producers, and agents who are so integral to Disney's core entertainment business, many of whom she has cultivated and empowered, and whose weighted opinion have helped drive Bob Chapek down the Matterhorn. Beyond Hollywood, however, there are many who question whether Walden has the financial expertise to manage the myriad complexities of the rest of the business, especially at a time of massive disruption and competition. Sure, some of this may be gendered nonsense because she's a woman, and we're saying, can she handle all this because she's a woman? You see where they're going with this article. Masquerading as corporate speak, both Iger and Michael Eisner came from the creative side of the business, and look what happened to the MBA candidate Bob Chapek, again, who took a lot of stuff, took the blame for a lot of stuff that he did not do. But it's worth noting, too, that Disney's peers like NBCU and Warner Brothers, for better or for worse, and soon Paramount, are run by traditional media operators. Disney is a theme park company first, and I think people need to kind of remember that. Disney may be a Hollywood company, but the job isn't just a Hollywood job anymore. It's about content and creatives. Yes, it's also a whole host of other responsibilities, capital allocation to drive growth, mergers and acquisition to shed assets and to acquire them, technological innovation, diplomacy with China over expansion, as well as the unions in Anaheim and Orlando over wages and healthcare deductibles. The list goes on and on. In my circles, everyone is resigned to Dana Walden getting the job, one Disney veteran said. So it seems like even the folks inside Disney, the rank and file, seem pretty convinced that this is it. It's kind of already a done deal, and the next year or two is just a formality. And Andre, I know you're kind of short on time. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's going to be a disaster anyway. First of all, I think that the entire process of finding a replacement is a complete and total sham and a joke. There's absolutely no reason why Bob Iger should be part of it at all, because conventionally, it is the board that finds a new CEO, because the CEO answers to the board. That is how it is supposed to be.
Right.
But Disney is different, because Disney is a hijacked company where only a small segment of the shareholders actually have any kind of say in the matter. And that would be the really big institutional state shareholders, like your BlackRock, your Vanguard, your State Street, and your Morgan Stanley, who is now in charge of the entire process. And what did this guy at Morgan Stanley do before? Oh, he found his own replacement way to ensure that there's new blood and new ideas in the company.
Yeah.
No. He found someone who's going to be exactly like himself, and that is what he's tasked with doing here. Finding a new Bob Iger that will continue to serve the minority of the really big institutional shareholders the way that they want, while keeping all of the other shareholders in the darkness. Because basically, who is on this committee that this Morgan Stanley guy is heading up? Well, it's him, and it's a couple of other board members, all of whom were appointed by Iger. And they're the ones who are supposed to find a new Iger. None of them, not a single person here, has actually been appointed by the shareholders. Meaning that the shareholders who aren't Morgan Stanley, they don't have any say whatsoever in who will be the new CEO of Disney. None.
And that's why
this entire process is a sham.
Yeah.
And I could say that it's going to be a disaster with Walden, but really it's going to be a complete disaster whoever they chooses, because they're just going to ensure that the corporate rule in accordance with a very specific minority of major institutional shareholder continues. And of those, I think that Dana Walden probably is as bad as it's going to be. And like imagining a parallel alternate future timeline where Kamala Harris is president and Dana Walden is the CEO of Disney. I don't. It sounds like hell to me.
And and to your point, and Grizzy, I don't know how much you follow a lot of the corporate side of what happens here, but I mean, this is part of the reason that we talk about all this is because this is what has direct impact on what we talk about more frequently, like crap like the Acolyte. Like this is where this
Uh-huh.
comes from. And when
Uh-huh.
you got somebody like Dana Walden, it's kind of like if you think the woke DEI stuff in Disney is bad now, wait until Dana's running the show.
Yeah, we have something to show you. I mean, if there's a time for the Acolyte season 2, it's going to be then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they might actually get if Dana takes over in a couple of years, she might circle back and and resurrect this hot turd. But this is why they were so adamant about keeping Nelson Peltz the hell out of that boardroom. This is why, because he would have been at least the one guy sitting in that room going, "Is she really the right person for this? Is Josh D'Amaro, who's a white guy?" I don't think he's necessarily the right person for this either. Frankly, I think Nelson Peltz would have looked at it and said, he would have said what I would have said, which would have been, I don't think there's a person sitting in this room or in the C-suite of Disney right now that should be running this company in 2 years.
that is the entire problem with Disney.
Yeah.
It's the board. It's at Disney, and this is what I've been saying for years. I wish
Yeah.
others would say it with me. Disney doesn't have a board. It
No.
technically does. It
Yeah.
technically has someone that shows up in board meeting, but it doesn't have someone that can fulfill the duties that a board is supposed to fulfill. It is unbelievable to me that the remaining shareholders who simply aren't represented haven't sued Disney and Disney's board for violation of fiduciary duties, because their fiduciary duties are violated every single day, that they do not know what is happening. And they don't, because the only function of the board as it is right now is to shield Bob Iger from the shareholders who aren't part of the club of Morgan Stanley and BlackRock and those.
No, they've
It's
basically been rubber
unbelievable that this
stamps.
can continue.
Yeah, they're rubber stamps, right? And then we've
Yeah.
talked about that. And that's the board is supposed to review what a CEO is doing. Obviously, they want to put their faith and trust in a CEO to let that person do the job to the best of their ability. But at times, like you can't just rubber stamp everything. And when you're Bob Iger, and literally every person on that board is somebody that Bob Iger personally put his hand on and nominated to the shareholders, which then just say, "Okay, Bob, here you go." The board is more answering to Bob, like you said, Andre, than Bob is answering to the board. It's the exact opposite of
Exactly.
what's supposed to be. And what that does is that keeps that insular type of thinking. They all trust him and say, "Yeah, if you think that's good, do whatever." But now, obviously, it's been catching up because the stock performance of Disney the last several years has just been atrocious, absolutely atrocious. And I think people are getting, kind of tired of waiting. And but let me bring in. We've got somebody coming in late today. What's up, bro?
Hey there. Been doing some birthday stuff, but happy to hop in a little bit blind. And I think this is the first time that I have been on a stream with Grizzy. So nice to meet you, sir. And Andre, I'll be hopefully hopping in on Midnight's Edge this week, maybe twice. We'll see.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I love Chuck. I'll be sending you links. Just hop in when you can.
Absolutely. Valiant, if there's any scoop that you and I have had that has been as big as declaring for now a year, I think, that Dana Walden was almost definitely the next CEO. I can't think of any scoop that has had that kind of a resonance, because you can scoop something in terms of a movie. You can have a little early leak about Luke Skywalker or something like that. Dana Walden is very good friends with Kamala Harris. She's very politically connected, and that is what Bob Iger has wanted for this company, and I think that's how they want to leave this company. I think that largely Disney has become a conduit for pushing out a particular political propaganda to children, and it's being soft pedaled right now, and they're kind of backing up a little bit from it because of the market reaction. But this is who they are, and this is what they believe the fabric of the company should be. It is not Walt Disney Company anymore. It is Bob Iger Company. It is the mouthpiece for children of, well, the left, and not the classical left. That's what I think we can read from Dana Walden essentially having been coronated months, if not a year ago.
Yeah, and I think it was always going to go down that route. And the article even kind of goes into, I think, some of the reasoning why. But then they also question it, thinking that, oh, well, this could just wind up being the same thing as Chapek again. But I have my doubts on that. But you see here, back to this quote, in my circles, everyone is resigned to the fact that Dana is going to get the job, one veteran said. No one disputes her TV bona fides or her style and polish, but no one believes she is capable. Yeah, nobody believes she is capable of running a 225,000 person global business with such a complex set of strategic problems.
Where were the most recent? Fair? Where were the most recent job reductions at Disney? Dana's house.
Board, well, yeah, a lot of television. Yeah, for sure.
A lot of television. Dana, listen, if you can point to me, something that's going well inside of Disney TV, I don't know about it. Things don't seem to be doing well underneath her. And there's a lot of things that are going wrong at Disney, but she's not one of the few things, if she was over Disney Cruise Lines, if she was one of the people turning the ship around for Marvel, maybe we would say, okay, well, there's a shining star in a sea of difficulties with Disney, but she's part of the problem. And, the difference in her and Bob Chapek is simple. When Bob Chapek came in, Bob Chapek ruffled feathers by having his own desire to think. And I know that seems silly, but the audience out there knows this. One of the things that angered Bob Iger was that Bob Chapek wanted to look at the books. Now think about that. Your new CEO angers the outgoing CEO and the CFO because he actually wants to look at the numbers. That tells you how this company was intended to be run, how it was going to be run. Dana Walden, I don't think, is a Bob Chapek. Dana Walden will do what Bob tells her to do, what the politicos tell her to do, and Bob will continue to be the CEO emeritus of this company.
Exactly. I have to be leaving. I just want to make one point. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Because what I think is that it doesn't really matter that Dana Walden isn't capable of being CEO for a company like Disney under normal circumstances. She's not supposed to be the CEO of Disney under normal circumstances. They're not looking for a CEO. This is why I'm saying this entire succession process is a complete and total sham. They're just looking for a figurehead that is going to have some level of institutional power, but really just going to be the face, while there's someone else behind her that's making the actual decisions. Kind of like what would be going on with her friends if she were to get into the White House in an even more elevated position than she has right now. I mean, who here believes that Kamala is capable of running a nation of almost 400 million people all on her own? Or is it going to be a complete and total team behind her that's going to do the actual job?
Well, we've had it, I think, the last 4 years. So, make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.